This is the Skeptical Student Show, created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
You can always listen to the episode on Fast Forward and follow the podcast to never miss new episodes. And while you're at it, don't forget to rate the podcast a 5-star.
Hello everyone, I am Gavish and I welcome you to a brand new episode of the Skeptical Student Show. According to a study published in the Asian Journal of Psychiatry, over 53% of Indian university students suffer from moderate to extremely severe depression. We certainly need to talk more about mental health, especially in terms of students. But to talk, we need at least two people. And for that, I have with me Devanshi Singh as the guest for today's episode. She is a second year student at Jagran Lake City University, Bhopal, studying public policy and administration along with international affairs. Devanshi was the graphics head for Hirayat, a mental health NGO, and served as an executive at Women of Bhopal, which is a social media outlet for women empowerment. And the best part is that she is my senior from school. Welcome to the show, Devanshi.
Thank you for having me, Gavish. It's an honor being here, and the fact that I'm your senior and you look up to me and invited me to your podcast means a lot. So, thank you for that.
I certainly do. Thank you so much for coming.
Blast from the Past segment.
And to start this episode, we know for the fact that academic stress is a part of student life, which tampers one's mental health. How about you tell us about your own experience with the same?
Well, coming from a science background, I was faced with a lot of pressure with academics. Firstly, I was a very average student and didn't get any exemplary marks in my high school. But since I was one of the most participative and obedient students all my life, before my plus two, not being able to be exemplary there really affected me. And it made me question whether I had lost my sparkle or lost my mojo regarding academics. On top of that, I joined a JEE coaching for help with my academics, even when I had no intention of giving the JEE exam or doing engineering in the first place. And since you've already made a podcast about JEE engineering, we all know how that goes. As a person with a lot more interest than just cracking JEE, I always felt like a misfit. So, all in all, I felt very out of place in my life. It was like standing in the middle of a crowded road, getting pushed and trampled over by the crowd where most people were going. I'm pretty sure some of the people there still don't know what they're doing with their life, just going on with the flow, I guess. On top of all of this, my family was going through a very toxic patch, and I, being a teenager and high schooler, had to manage all of that and get along with school as well. I fell into a deep depression, and I still have anxiety because of these tough years while I was just a child trying to find my place in this fast and busy world. Also, I had some body image issues where people used to make fun of my weight. That is very common, but when your family does that as well, it kind of affects you in a different way. Now that I'm over it, it does not come across my mind anymore, but sometimes it still comes back. The times where you don't feel good enough to be seen by other people, that hits you a lot. But other than that, I was finding myself losing touch with reality. But even though I went through all of that, it was what made me eventually strong enough and mature enough to understand the feelings of others and why people do what they do. And overall, just knowing a little more of how the world works and coming to ground reality.
Well, my heart goes out to you, and thank you so much for being so transparent and 100% honest. Talking about my experience, I haven't really had any mental health issues as such, although there was academic stress throughout different points of my student life. And they still are there in college as well. But I don't think I really let this stress take over me. I was always good at managing it somehow, and I knew what I wanted. I almost fought with my family to take up humanities and not science, which I have talked about already in my humanities episode. So, if I listened to them, maybe things could have turned out differently. A remote example of problems induced by academic stress would be when I was struggling to study maths throughout my 7th, 8th, and ninth standard. I literally used to have panic attacks. I used to cry myself to sleep. just a night before the maths exam because I simply could not make sense of what was in front of me. I couldn't relate to those numbers, and that is why I left it as soon as I could after 10th standard. And I think disassociating itself from me was actually helpful. And as far as depression or going into a deep state of sadness is concerned, I don't think that has ever been the case with me, or I have never landed in that boat, to be honest.
Problem pinpoint and seeking solutions segment.
Now, shifting our point of perspective from experiences to problems and their solutions. Why do you think mental health is underestimated in India and is such a taboo of a topic?
So in India, basically mental health is simply not considered as concrete of an illness as a physical illness. You basically cannot just stitch up a mental illness and wait for it to heal. It is also the cultural perspective that mental health illnesses associate with being crazy or mad. When people use those derogatory terms, not necessarily stupid or crazy or something like that, but just shaming the person who comes out and is vulnerable about struggling with their mental health. That is what is a part of the problem. Other than that, it is also shown as a weakness, which in turn makes people vulnerable. And the fact is, no one wants to be vulnerable. People are also afraid about how other people would look at you and how other people would judge you. And once people come out with being mentally unstable and mentally vulnerable, people question your abilities because it's not as simple as healing a wound. As I said, mental illnesses has been recognized as one of the disabilities under Section 2(1) of the Person with Disabilities Act 1995, where mental illness has been defined under the Section 2(q) of the said act as any mental disorder other than mental retardation. Basically, the taboo of being disabled also comes under the discussion. And now that mental health is under this taboo, it is faced with a lot of judgment.
You rightly pointed out to the fact that mental illness is as normal as physical illness. And just like you go to a doctor when you are physically hurt, so should be the case when you are mentally ill. And I think the only possible way of breaking away from this taboo would be to normalize it, normalize talking about it, and that is how we can certainly change things. Moving on, what do you think leads to mental health issues in student life or in general, if I may ask?
The cause of mental health is not really a straight line. The places where the mental health issues come from is certainly not concrete. It can come from various places. It can come from abuse, trauma, isolation, discrimination. There's a lot of things. And even if a person does not have any major problem happening in their life, they can still be affected. When you end up losing someone, that can also be a place where your mental health degrades and you feel lonely and stuff like that. It can also come from stress, which can come from jobs, which in turn comes to the education system and the corporate world. But we don't have to talk about that. And violence, that is also one of the reasons.
Yes, certainly. And I think you would agree that in terms of students, mental health issues also sprout from the unreal expectations that students might have in their mind in terms of gaining certain kind of experience from college, like how rosy and glittery the picture has been painted by Bollywood and, so to say, even the internet.
Yes, I agree. The unrealistic college life that has been portrayed in movies and social media is the same as school life, and it's just an unrealistic world. But young people who are idealizing all of these characters and all of these stories, they can be a victim to these expectations and then find themselves running after the race that doesn't actually have an end, and that can cause a lot of mental stress.
I also wanted to ask, do you think people actually use depression to seek attention? Because so has been claimed by people at times.
I don't think there is a way to actually know when a person is using depression for attention, because people have been setting a trend about depression now. It's really hard to know when a person is being genuine, and we just want to help people. So, as long as you are doing your part to help them, helping them get through what they're going through, I don't think it's much of a problem. But people should not use depression and anxiety as a trend. It's just wrong.
Yes, true, because doing so would dilute the very purpose of the argument which we are having, that depression and all these issues are actually very real. And what do you think about the casual use of terms like depression in place of sadness just because the students today think that it is cool?
Like I said, it's just a trend, and it's wrong for people going through depression and anxiety. Even daily tasks like being in a crowd or working in a social space or working in an office can be really
Or
difficult.
even getting out of bed.
Yeah, even getting out of bed and going through the day. So, associating sadness with depression is just wrong, and it subdues the seriousness of this topic.
Yes, perfectly put. Moving on, it has been often said that talking helps, or you should open up to a person when you feel like doing it and when you are suffering. But we should be able to determine whom to open up to so that it doesn't backfire. Or to put it in simpler words, how do you think we should choose our people?
First and foremost, I think you should talk to a person who knows what they're doing. So, contacting professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, that is most important. But if you do not have the confidence to go to them or the resources to go to them, I think your parents are the next best option. I know some people are not comfortable with their parents, but they are the ones that know you the most. Even though you might not be comfortable with them right now, they have probably gone through what you are going through and they would know what to do in that situation. So, not just throwing whatever you're going through at them, slowly bringing it up to them and them realizing what you're going through, that may be a solution to your problem. Apart from parents, you can join support groups. There are online support groups in NGOs and organizations that would readily help you. And there are anonymous helplines that you could call and talk about what you're going through with. I have two with me. The first one is Voice That Cares. That's a free public helpline that provides psychological counseling support on a wide range of mental health issues. The number is 8448 84485. And the second one is called Roshni Trust, and their helpline is 040 66 202 000. I think reaching out to these helplines can be very effective for people that have anxiety talking to other people that they know or have a fear of other people judging you.
Thank you for sharing the helpline numbers, but not to generalize, I think not everyone's parents are so nice, and it can go to the extent that even sometimes the parents are the cause of mental illness in children. And I've also heard of cases wherein the school counselors actually made the situation worse. So, what would you say about that? What would you suggest in such a case when the plan has actually backfired?
When you don't have anybody to go talk to, the only person you can work on is yourself. And that's what I did. I didn't go to my parents and I didn't really share stuff with my friends, not the serious stuff at least. I just worked on myself and tried to connect with more people, try to surround myself with more positive people and not be so hard on myself. Even though there were days where I felt like the worst person in the world, I knew that I've done good stuff. I don't deserve to be so harsh on myself. Once you turn that page and acknowledge that it's the past and it's a part of yourself and you have to learn to grow, it's going to help you either way.
Well said. There has been a growing importance of mental health counselors at institutes, and every school or organization is readily recruiting them. What would you say about this positive change?
Mental health counselors at institutions, whether it be college or school, is very necessary in my opinion because students are still discovering themselves and they face a lot of pressure in terms of their career and they might not be comfortable sharing with, as we said, parents or friends, anyone for that matter. And they wouldn't be afraid of any judgment. It would be strictly confidential, and stuff like that is really reassuring to the person that wants to reach out and wants to be vulnerable. So that is very important. And it can be anonymous. There are some places where the counselors can have anonymous messaging or stuff like that for students. And Plus, it's free of cost for the people that cannot afford going to a psychiatrist or a therapist can reach out to the counselor free of cost, and they won't even have to tell their parents about it. And it's basically an outlet for children
Exactly.
and adults.
Yes. And it is certainly very essential in terms of the safe space that it provides. Now, talking particularly about the solutions, what do you think are the various ways to tackle mental health issues?
Tackling mental health is a very sensitive topic, and we have to tread very carefully in terms of quote unquote solving it. We have to try to carefully and slowly get out of our comfort zone. And as I said, try to connect with people, try to surround yourself with positive people, reassure yourself about your worthiness and your place in the world. And you shouldn't put yourself below others. All of this is very tried and tested and superficial, but they have been repeated many times for a reason. Building yourself up slowly and carefully is what is needed when you are the only one that is going to support yourself. And valuing yourself as a person, as a human being, as an entity is very important so that your mind does not pull yourself down.
Points well made. And what do you think about introduction of mental health literacy at schools? Like we had talked about earlier, if this is made compulsory to study in schools, I think there won't be anyone who would use depression or terms like depression very casually, because then they would be made aware, and awareness is certainly one of the keys to fight this battle.
Awareness is certainly one of the keys, that is true. Apart from stopping people using these terms as a trend, understanding is something that will increase substantially when it comes to education about mental health, because people right now don't really understand where mental health comes from and why people cannot solve it, why it takes years and years to actually get over mental health issues. And once people are actually educated about it, people can be more understanding, more compassionate, more empathetic, and basically create an ethical equilibrium in the society.
Yes, and I think from my side, I would also like to talk about various coping mechanisms which can help you in difficult times, such as music, pursuing a hobby, and doing things which actually make you feel good about yourself, even if it is things like clicking a photo. What would you say about that?
Yeah, coping mechanisms can be positive as well as negative. The negative ones are to be avoided, but the positive ones can be just, as simple as going out for a walk or having a coffee or petting your neighbor's dog. It can be as simple as doing a picnic, making a sandwich. If it makes you happy, that's what matters.
Exactly. And I think lastly, I would want to talk about a very necessary skill which we all must possess, which is cutting off. I think I would have Devanshi talk about it.
Well, when I was talking about surrounding yourself with positive people, the hidden part was cutting off the negative people in your life. And that is a very important thing that has to be done when you are struggling with a relationship, with a friendship, with a family member, or anything like that. Cutting off people is very necessary. I mean, it doesn't have to be easy, but it is what is necessary. And even if it's a family member, you don't have to feel guilty, or you don't have to feel like you're doing something wrong, because you are putting yourself first. And as we talked about valuing oneself, this is a part of that. And putting yourself above them and cutting them off for your own sake is not a bad thing at all.
True. Putting yourself first is not at all selfish.
Response segment.
Moving on to the next segment of our show, in which we deliberate upon the responses received from the listeners. And for today, we had put up a question on my Instagram, which went like, can suicide be justified in terms of right not to live? Shall it be punishable by law? I think the extreme or the most dangerous repercussion of a mental health illness which a person can go through is committing suicide. And when we talk about this, I had also pointed out to the fact that under section 303 of the Indian Penal Code, which is about attempt to commit suicide. It says, whoever attempts to commit suicide and does any act towards the commission of such offense shall be punished with simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year, or with fine, or with both. And the responses which I had received were impressive. So Prashansa says,
Hello, this is Prashansa Raj, and my response to the aforementioned question is we were brought into this world without being asked. So, why shouldn't we have the liberty to go as we please?
The thing is that once you were brought into this world, you created connections as friends and family and people that you care about. Going on your will without thinking about the people that would be affected after you is irrational. I usually don't talk about topics like these because they're very sensitive and people have very polar opposite
yeah,
opinions. But I don't have a concrete opinion. I am just concerned about the people that get left behind and have to suffer because of a choice that one person made. It's a very serious topic and shouldn't be taken lightly.
all right. And as far as the law is considered, I think this is what is irrational because to begin with, a person wants to end his life. And on top of that, if caught doing so, you are charging the person with imprisonment. So the person in the first place doesn't want to live. And then you are forcing them to live inside a jail. So this means that this is, in a way, double punishment, being in jail and also being forced to live.
Moral of the episode.
We are heading towards the end of this episode. So, Devanshi, I would like to hear from you in your own last words the moral of this episode.
The moral of this episode is that everyone can have a certain degree of mental stress and mental anguish. That is completely okay. As long as you try to grow, you try to learn from it, you try to mature from it. And there are people that will help you. There are organizations and support groups and people that you care about. The only thing you need is hope. Make yourself into a more positive person that can in turn help others going through the same situations as you. Going through this journey of yours can actually help you understand the world better and would make you a more understanding person. Even if you're going through all of this, it does not mean that you are weak. You are allowed to be vulnerable. There are plenty of outlets for you to reach out to people and in the process make connections with people and help others as well.
Do you know that the suicide pods have been given a green signal in Switzerland? Well, having said that, I think suicide is certainly not the solution, but that doesn't mean that it can't be justified or someone who has committed suicide is weak. Also, the stigma that goes around mental health needs to be called out, and it is only you and me who are capable of doing that. Along with that, we all should be more supportive and be willing to check in on people as and when required. Lastly, don't be afraid to seek help or ask for it whenever you need it because help is standing right outside your doorstep and all you need to do is just walk up to that door and open it.
Supplementary segment.
So, as a part of our last segment for Devanshi and those who do not know, in this segment, we give something back to our listeners, something of value to remember this episode by. And for this episode, especially, I have an Instagram post which consists of 100 reasons why not to die or why not to commit suicide. The link to this public post has been made available in the episode description. So, since it is public, you can go and readily access it. And now to bid you farewell. Thank you so much, Devanshi, for taking out time and agreeing to do this. It was wonderful to have a conversation with you on this topic. I hope you have everything which you wish for in life. And if you think we missed out on a point, or if you would want to give in your responses for the response segment, or if you would want to simply stay connected, you can reach out to us on Instagram. I am called Gavish Raptor with GAVISH _RAPTOR. Devanshi, how can the listeners reach out to you?
Okay, so people can reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. On Instagram, my username is DEVANXHI, and on LinkedIn, it's just my name, and Facebook, it's just my name. Even if someone random who's listening to this has something that they're going through, need a ear or anything, you can text me and we can talk. Yeah, just take care of yourself. And thank you, Gavish, so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you about this, and more people need to talk about it.
Thank you so much. I'm sure people must have been able to see through this podcast into your kindness. And anyone who would want to write to Devanshi is welcome to do so. That's very considerate of you. So, thank you so much, Devanshi, for becoming a part. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. And don't forget to tune in next week for a fresh episode.
You were listening to the Skeptical Student Show by Gavish Raptor, created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.